Hello, my name is Adam Manuel, and in this video I'm going to briefly discuss 3 books that I found of use for anyone who wants to research Spain. This could be used for myself because I have lately been thinking about what I could write my dissertation on when the time comes, and I'd like to get a rough idea of something and narrow it down and perfect it, so by the time it comes to write it, I already have a very good idea of what I want to write. So my idea is basically, we know that Spain has had people ruling it for long periods of time, but different people over those centuries. So, for example, we know that the Romans ruled it for a period of time, then there's followed by the Visigoths, then the Muslims ruled it for 400 years, then finally in the late 15th, early 16th century, we had kings and queens ruling Spain, and then moving into the 18th and 19th century, we have various different aspects of rule and occupation, and that could create various different, a very unique identity for Spain. So I thought it'd be interesting to look into that identity of Spain in that perspective. What various aspects of those occupations and rule contributed to the identity of a person living in Spain today. So the first art book that I found was entitled Europe After Rome, A New Cultural History 500 to 1000 by Julia M. H. Smith. And in this book, it describes how basically the development of Europe after the fall of Rome. So 500 to 1000, in those 500 years, various things happened all over Europe, and they will discuss those developments in the book. This could be very useful for anyone who wants to get a base knowledge of the history of Europe in that time frame, but it could be useful for a person researching Spain because the book does go into some detail describing the development of Spain in that time frame. The description on the website states that the book uses methodology combining cultural history, regional studies, and gender history. So all those go very strongly with the idea of developing an identity of the culture. So you could definitely get some very interesting information looking at that source. The next one I found is more of a linguistic study, but it could still be useful for a person studying the history of Spain or just the world in general. But the book is entitled A History of the Spanish Lexicon, A Linguistic Perspective. And basically this book uses primary sources quite extensively to basically map how the Spanish language developed over the entire history of Spain. So you get how the language was developed when it was a subject of Rome. So obviously the people who lived in the Iberian Peninsula before the Romans took over spoke a specific language, or they had to communicate somehow. Then obviously when the Romans came in, they introduced Latin to the speech of the people, and obviously this adapted Latin and how it transported and transposed and created various aspects of that. So then it goes all the way up to when the separation even of the Spanish from the Portuguese language. So that'd be very interesting for a person wanting to discover the identity of Spain linguistically. Then you can look at the third article that I found was entitled Admiration and Awe, Morisco Buildings and Identity Negotiations in Early Modern Spanish Historiography. So obviously this source uses will discuss historiography, so that could be beneficial to anyone who wants to gain a better understanding of what has been written about early modern Spain already, but in addition to that, they will also discuss the architectural aspect of Spain and its development over the centuries, because obviously if you go to Spain you can see the influence of Arabic architecture, you can see Roman architecture, you can see architecture from all over, and it just speaks to how these people in charge and their cultures rubbed off and created the Spanish identity. I feel that those would be very interesting because they would be able to, a person would be able to take that information and utilize it to get a really interesting perspective on how Spain has changed over time, what events in history even influenced what a person would use to be considered a Spaniard, and enjoy their culture. I hope you enjoy this video, and I anticipate interesting answers.